Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Roger H3, and today I will be making a ultimate support tier list video for you all. Now, one may ask, what is an ultimate tier list? Well, for my last ultimate tier list that I did for DPS, I actually only talked about the easiest DPS characters to play. But for supports, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the easiest and the best supports to play. These will be two separate tier lists. Although I appreciate everybody who sticks around and watches the whole video, if you're interested in seeing a specific part, remember you can always use the bookmarks down below and select whatever portion of the video you prefer to see. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the support tier lists. Also, if you are not already, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and drop a like on the video to help me out as I continue to grow. And also think about joining the Discord that will be in the link of this video and at the top of my YouTube channel, where we can continue to have conversations about Overwatch, other video games, and plan some custom games. So first, I'm actually going to go ahead and hop on doing the easiest supports first. I think this would be very beneficial for most people, especially those who are unsure what support they should try to learn next, or what support they should try to main, or anybody who's newer to the game in general. So let's go ahead and roll right into that. So first, let's go ahead and take a look at the S tier. I believe Moira is the only S tier support character there is in terms of ease of play and ease of learning the character and all the mechanics behind the character. Moira often gets criticized as the character that people select when they're unable to aim or they don't know how to play the game of Overwatch. In my opinion, Moira is a fairly good character for the majority of the ranks that you guys may be in. So if you guys are an average player or even below average, Moira is a very easy character to pick up and get high value from. Now, there are definitely concerns about choosing Moira as you get higher in ranks, and some of that comes from her utility, which we'll talk about later when we talk about the best support heroes. But in general, I think Moira is an extremely easy hero to pick up. You practically have a get out of jail free card with her fade that gets you out of a lot of sticky situations if you get stuck in a bad situation. And then her healing orb and damage orb are pretty decent abilities to have as well. You can get out a decent amount of healing with it and a decent amount of damage as you throw it away at the enemies. Well, I shouldn't say as you throw it away at the enemy, but as you throw it towards the enemy to do damage to them. Now, as we go ahead and get into the A tier, I'm sure this is where I'm already going to get some criticism from you guys who have played Overwatch a good bit. So if you guys have differing opinions, definitely drop them in the comments, and I'm always open to conversation about this stuff. But for the A tier, I think the only person that should be listed here is Bap. Now, the next question that somebody would naturally ask is, why do I think Bap is the only person that belongs in A tier? Now, granted, Bap is a little bit different than Moira in the fact that you actually have to be able to aim to use him. You don't get away with not really aiming. Now, you can kind of spam choke points like you can with any other character, but with Bap, you have a burst weapon. It can be a little bit difficult to aim, but I think he's very easy to get value with as a support character. He gives out high heals. He is a good option as somebody to pick as a main healer on a team. And what a main healer is somebody who's able to put out an extreme amount of healing and kind of heal the most out of the two supports on the team. Additionally, he also has the ability to do insane damage. He can do as much damage as a DPS. It all depends on how you want to play him. Realistically, you would want to find a balance between both of these, but as a new player, obviously you're not expected to do both as such a high level as somebody who has more experience. Also with Bap, he has the ability to heal himself and his surrounding teammates with a quick burst rather than just his secondary fire. And one of his other abilities that are actually one of the best abilities in the game, which is his immortality field, which it does exactly as it sounds. For anybody within the immortality field, they cannot die. So if you're standing within the circle of that immortality field and you take damage, you will not be able to die as long as that immortality field is up. Now, next up is the B tier, and this is where we start to hit characters that I believe are a little bit more mechanically demanding to play. They're still not extremely difficult, I feel like, but they definitely take some practice, and most people probably will not be able to pick them up and just do immediately well with them, especially if you are newer to gaming. But rounding out the B tier, I do have Lucio, Illiari, and Ana. I would say out of all these choices, Lucio is probably the easiest to play. However, he is still very difficult to play at a high level. He's probably easy to just pick up and kind of run around behind your team, flip back and forth between heals and speed boost, and just kind of try to benefit your team in general. But as you start to play at a higher level, he has a much higher skill ceiling than he immediately seems, especially with using his wall running and being a distraction for other teams. But once you get used to how his gun shoots, which is relatively more like a projectile than an immediate registering hit scan weapon, you can get pretty decent value from him. His boop can give you pretty high value if you use it at the right time. However, it can be difficult to use properly from time to time and to get good value from if you're not in the right position or close enough to actually hit it. Lucio, in my opinion, would not be a real traditional main healer pick or somebody who's able to give out mass heals to your team, but he is a good secondary pick that can kind of give you an option to do some off angling and just play a little bit more unique and different than what some other supports do. I think, once again, at a high level, he can be very difficult to play as you continue to rank up. But to begin with, I think he's really easy to get value for if you're a completely new player to Overwatch or video games in general. And you can kind of pick him up, just move around, move side to side, jump around a little bit, shoot your gun, and you could probably get a few kills and help your team out a little bit while you do it. Next up after Lucio, I have Illiari as my next support, ranked as one of the ones that I think are semi-easy to get good value from. Now, her kit is really cool and pretty easy to use, honestly. She has a pylon that does pretty good heals, so if you're able to put this pylon in a good position, it makes it very difficult for the other team to destroy it, and it's able to pump out a lot of heals that you don't have to necessarily continue to focus your team the whole time, so you're able to do some damage while you're still healing at the same time without feeling like you have to look away from the enemy to look at your teammates in order to heal them. On the opposing side of this though, in order to use Illiari properly, you have to be able to hit your shots. She has a rifle, I guess as I would call it, that you have to allow to charge up between each shot. This takes, I'm not saying an exact time here, I would say relatively between a half a second and a second for each charge. So you cannot full auto Illiari. You can't just keep tapping your gun. Now, I'm sure there's a circumstance where you might want to, like if you have somebody who's extremely low and you just need to get that last tap on them to kill them, then yeah, go ahead and do it. But in most cases, you want to allow her weapon to get fully charged between each shot. And this is a hit scan character that you don't have the ability to aim in with a scope. So these shots can be a little bit difficult to hit if you're not used to playing hit scan characters, especially in a game like Overwatch where people move so fast. And then another cool part of her kit is her outburst ability, which gives her the ability to push enemies away from her while she jumps and moves in a direction that you choose. So this is great if you have an enemy diving on you and you want to create some space or some separation. You can go ahead and pop that ability and it'll get everybody away from you. Additionally, this gives you an option to have a little bit more quick movement. If you're trying to get somewhere quickly, then you're able to pop that outburst ability and you're able to get a little bit further quicker than what you might be able to moving at a normal speed. Now, I have Illiari marked as a more difficult character just for the sheer fact that I think she's harder to get value from as a newer player in Overwatch or as a player who might be a little bit below average or just average if you're not good with hit scan. If you're good with a hit scan character, then I think Illiari could be ranked above Lucio. But if you're not, I think Lucio is probably better for the average person because you kind of run around, just have fun and do your own thing. Obviously not do your own thing too much as in leave your team and kind of throw the game. But I think he's just a little bit easier to just pick up. You can kind of throw your shots places. You'll get some nice hits on people. And Illiari, you know, you have to have a little bit better aim. So just for that, I have her ranked behind Lucio. Then last but not least in the B tier, I have Ana. And I have Ana at the end of the B tier just for the sheer fact that I think she is mechanically the hardest to play out of all three of these characters that I have in the B tier. Now, that does not mean she does not get good value, as you all will see when I go ahead and do the best support tier rankings, but she's just a bit harder than Lucio and Illiari to play. It's a bit difficult to play Ana, especially if you have a lack of experience. She is a mixture of a hit scan and projectile. When you're scoped in on her weapon, you have a hit scan. When you're zoomed out and you're no scoping, you have a projectile. Also, her nade is a projectile and it can be a bit difficult to aim when you throw it. And her sleep dart is also something that can be a bit hard to aim if you're not used to flicking to hit a sleep dart on someone properly in the right angle. Ana is definitely a character that could be debatably lower on this list, possibly C or D, honestly. It just kind of depends on how good you are. We can discuss this more as we get towards the end of the tier list, but if you're unable to hit shots with Ana, you definitely probably shouldn't play Ana. But I think she's probably easier to get value from than some of the people who are below her, which innately makes her above them, even though she's a bit more mechanically difficult to play. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but we can kind of touch on this as we continue through the video. Now, next up, moving up to the C tier, we have Brig, Kiriko, and Zen in that exact order. Now, to start, I actually have Brig ranked as the easiest support in this tier. Now, there's quite a few reasons why. And I'm gonna be honest, it is not because I think she is the best in this tier. I think she's easier because you don't have to worry about aiming a weapon, and you also don't have to worry about catching yourself in as bad of positions, if that makes sense. Brigitte has a shield that's able to block a decent amount of damage and also get her out of sticky situations. She's able to pull up her shield and use her shield bash to stun others as well as get out of situations. She also has her primary attack, which is her flail that she's able to use to do melee damage, and she also has an ability where she can poke with her flail, pushing somebody back slightly and doing a little bit of longer distance damage. Now, I would honestly say I don't think any of these abilities are really great. Also, her healing is capped by the number of med packs she has. She routinely has 3 and there's a cooldown on them, so they're not unlimited like some other abilities are for other supports, thus making her a little bit less viable to play. However, she is easiest to play because you don't have to worry about aiming. You can just flail your flail around, and as long as you don't get yourself overextended and caught in horrible positions, you can usually get some value from her and actually block some damage, protecting your other support and potentially some of your DPSs as well. So with all these reasons put together, that's why I have Brig at the beginning of the C tier. Now next up, I do have Kiriko, and Kiriko is a great support. She will be ranked very highly on our best support list, but I have her pretty low in terms of where she sits on the quote-unquote easiest support tier list, and let me tell you why. Kiriko can get extremely high value if you're able to use her properly. However, as somebody who would be a newer player or maybe not as good at Overwatch or gaming in general, Kiriko is going to be a really tough character for you to learn. Her Kusunai are pretty hard to hit. They can do a lot of damage, especially if you hit a headshot, but you have to be relatively accurate with them. If somebody dives you and gets in your face, you have to be able to react quick enough to hit a few Kusunai to either scare them and make them back up from you, or to secure a kill. You do have the ability to teleport with Kiriko if you're able to find a teammate to teleport towards. This ability is very good, but you have to be able to use it in the proper way, and you still don't want to get too overextended, especially if you aren't comfortable doing damage as Kiriko. Kiriko's heals are pretty decent, although I would say as a straight heal bot, she would not be the best character to pick either. As a support, you don't really want to be just a heal bot. You do want to get out as high heals as you can and keep your team alive. She's a bit more complicated of a hero for people to play, and I just think as a newer person, she would be a difficult character to pick up and play immediately. There are definitely easier characters to pick up, so this is really just a long-winded way of saying that Kiriko is a little bit more complex to play. She does take a little bit better mechanics, but that doesn't take away from her being a great hero to play, which you'll see later what I talk about in the best support rankings. So that kind of lands her lower on our list here. Then last in our C tier, we have Zenyatta. Zenyatta's lowest tier because he is kind of more so like a DPS support, if that makes any sense. He does limited healing with his healing orb. However, his orb isn't as bad as I think people try to say it is. However, it is not as good as pretty much any other support healing output in the game. His Discord orb has been nerfed. It's still relatively decent if your team is able to follow up on it and use it to do additional damage to an enemy tank or someone like that. However, as a newer player, this is just a relatively difficult character to play, honestly. You really only play him for damage, and he can be difficult to do damage with if you're not able to hit your shots, so I just have him lower in the C tier for that fact alone. And lastly, for the easiest support tier list, we have the D tier. In the D tier, I have Lifeweaver and Mercy. I might get some hate for putting Mercy this low, but I personally think Mercy is a very hard character to actually play and get good at. Mercy is one of the few supports that I feel like I cannot play at all. I feel like she's very difficult and her movement is just very finicky, which makes her a little bit difficult to play in my opinion. In terms of Lifeweaver, I definitely think he's a little bit easier than Mercy for the sheer fact you don't have to worry about trying to fly around and stuff. Lifeweaver is pretty easy to get out heals if you understand how his healing ability works and how you have to charge it up and burst it. His damage is pretty negligible, but so is Mercy's. I just think these two supports are pretty difficult to play. Lifeweaver had a really controversial rollout in my opinion, and Mercy, like I said, I'm just not a Mercy person. Some people might want to put her higher on this list, but in my opinion, I think she's actually a pretty difficult support to get good value from, especially as you continue to climb up the ranks. So once again, I am going to go ahead and put the easiest support tier list back on the screen one more time for you all to see it. I'm not going to talk about it too much again because I need to get on with the best support tier list. Once again, if you guys have made it this far or you jumped ahead and you hear this, please think about subscribing to the channel. It helps me out a ton as I continue to grow. I've put a lot of time in my last few videos, so I really appreciate all the support, comments, and feedback everybody's providing. But let's go ahead and hop into the best support portion of this video. Now we're going to go ahead and make a best support tier list. So hopefully this helps out people who are a little bit more experienced, or even anybody in general who might be new to the channel, but you're just interested in what characters might be the meta and what characters you should learn based off of how easy they are and how good they are. So let's go ahead and roll right into it. So first off, we have the S tier, and as a lot of people know, and I kind of agree with everybody else, Kiriko and Ana are easily the two best supports in the game right now. And a lot of that has to do with just the utility and the abilities that these characters have. First, starting with Kiriko, I think she is ultimately the best support. Her Suzu gives her so much value. She's able to make people invulnerable as well as take away any effects that are going on someone. So this ability is very powerful and very unique. It is able to save people's lives time and time again, and not just for the fact of somebody being low and you have to hurry up and throw it out to save them. You can use it to take away any effect in the game, and it is just extremely powerful. Next up, we have Ana. She also obviously has a very powerful ability in her nade. She is able to put anti-effects on enemies and healing effects on teammates. This anti-effect can really counter quite a few people, as it makes the character unable to be healed, and it just makes their life a lot more difficult, especially if you're playing against somebody like Hog. Hog not being able to heal himself makes a large part of his kit no longer viable. Next up in A tier, we have Bap alone. So I think Bap, Kiriko, and Ana honestly make up the three best and quote-unquote most overpowered supports there are in the game. I think Bap is a character that doesn't need a lot of explanation for those of you who've been playing the game for a while. Those of you who haven't been playing the game, once again, as I mentioned in the easiest supports tier list, his immortality field gets so much value. The fact that you're able to throw that out, and as long as that is out and not broken, anybody within the field cannot die. That is extremely powerful and something that works very well in your favor. Additionally, the ability to give a burst of healing to yourself and everybody around when you are in a sticky situation or you just need to get out some quick heals in addition to your secondary fire. That is another amazing ability that Bap has. Not even to mention that he can be literally a DPS beast and do as much DPS as a DPS itself. So Bap is a really great character. I just think the only reason he's an A here, in my opinion, is he has a little bit less ability and utility than Kiriko and Ana. Kiriko and Ana can just give you a slightly better upper hand than Bap can in certain situations. But as I mentioned, in my opinion, Bap is nearly at the same level as Kiriko and Ana. Next up, I think this is where I might receive some criticism, but once again, this is who I think the best supports are, and everybody's entitled to their own opinion. So going into the B tier, we have Illiari, Lifeweaver, and Moira. Now we have Illiari at the beginning of this tier because I think she's quite good. I think her pylon does pretty decent heals. I think she's able to output a decent amount of damage. Her utility is pretty decent. Her abilities are pretty decent. I think she's all around a pretty good pick. Now, obviously her abilities aren't quite as good as Bap, Ana, or Kiriko, and obviously, as I said, there's some movement that can happen here based off of different people's opinions and what playstyle they have. But Illiari is a great pick as a potential support who can do a little bit of everything. Now, you can't expect her secondary fire, which is her healing beam, to be able to keep somebody up for an extended period of time. It does only last for a short period. Same with her rifle. You can't expect that to be an automatic shot. You do have to let that charge between each shot. But as long as your team plays well around you and you're able to output the heals that your team needs, I think she's a great pick, especially with the fact that she is also a great DPS support. Once again, as a support, I am still of the belief that you should try to heal as much as you can, but you should also be trying to do damage. You are a support, so you need to do a little bit of everything. Obviously, your main function is not damage, but Illiari is another pick that really just hits it all, and she can do a little bit of everything. Now, next up, once again, we have Lifeweaver. I'm not gonna lie, it took a bit out of me to put Lifeweaver this high, but after having a few conversations with fellow creators, people I often play Overwatch with, a few subscribers and followers, I do realize that Lifeweaver is actually a pretty good pick. He can get really good value. Obviously, his damage is rather subpar, although I can't tell you how many times I have embarrassingly died from a Lifeweaver when I shouldn't have. His life grip and his tree alone give him a ton of value. I know these are two very good abilities, so for just those two and his ability to output heals, I think he does belong this high on the tier, and I think he does belong above Moira because his ability and utility is better than Moira's is right now. So that's why I have Lifeweaver next. Then lastly, going on to Moira, as I said, I think her abilities and utilities just aren't as good as Lifeweaver or Illiari. Moira is a really good pick for people who may not be as mechanically sound. Moira can still get out a ton of heals. I know we have a criticism and a back and forth between DPS Moira and healer support Moira. If you're able to get a good balance on both of those, Moira is an extremely great character. She can do it all, but unfortunately she doesn't have any abilities that can really stop somebody from dying like Ana does or Bap does, and she doesn't have the ability to anti the enemy like Ana does. So it makes her a little bit worse of a pick than everybody else, but she's still a very viable character. Now, next up, going to the C tier, we have both Lucio and Zen. This was another tough tier, and I'm sure I can get some criticism or different opinions here as well, so feel free to drop those in the chat. But I have Lucio and Zen here because I do believe that they are worse than the tier above them. However, within the tier, I do think Lucio can get better value than Zen can, especially after the series of Discord Orb nerfs that Zen has gotten. Discord Orb isn't necessarily as overpowered as it used to be, but either way, in my opinion, both of these characters are in the correct tier. Maybe Zen could be in front of Lucio for some. Maybe for others, Lucio can be in front of Zen, like how I have it here. That's kind of up to personal preference. That's kind of how the tiers work. They can move side to side, but at least I have people in the tier that I think they belong. Just talking about Lucio real quick, as a lot of people know, he's our favorite speedster. He's able to give a speed boost to everybody around him. He has a healing range around him. It can be pretty useful, but at the same time, we all know that it doesn't heal nearly as fast or as well as some of the other healers that could be considered main healers. For example, like Bap's able to put out a ton of heals. Lucio can't heal as fast, but he has consistent heals and you don't have to worry about aiming around you. So he has a pretty good function. His damage is pretty good if you're able to aim his shots, and his ultimate is very good. He's able to give somebody an extreme amount of health, over health, and everything of that sort to kind of save people from different ongoing events and other people's ultimates. So for that reason, I do have him higher than Zen. But going ahead and talking about Zen, Zen's ultimate is also very similar to Lucio's. I just think Lucio's is a little bit better in most cases, but Zen's relatively does the same thing with Transcendence. Zen is a bit harder to get value with though. He's a little bit more mechanically demanding, as we said in the easiest support portion of this video, and altogether Discord Orb and his Healing Orb really don't get a ton of value. His Healing Orb isn't as bad as a lot of people lead it on to be, but Zen in general just isn't the greatest support in my opinion right now. You guys are obviously welcome to have your own opinions as well. Then onto the last tier, tier D, I have Brig and Mercy here. I think Brig and Mercy are the two least viable supports right now in my opinion. I know Brig is able to counter Doomfist and a few other characters that might be quite annoying. She's able to be a good pick to counter dive characters, but all around, I don't think Brig's all that great. I don't think I get great value from her personally. I know other people might really like Brig. Obviously, there's people out there who main Brig. I just think that she isn't the best. I know her ultimate is pretty decent. Some people really like it, but for me, I just think she belongs really low on this tier list. And then last up, we have Mercy. I know once again, I have done Mercy pretty dirty here. I put her on the bottom of the easiest supports and the best supports. I just really am not a big Mercy person. I always love when I have a good Mercy on my team. As long as you play well and our team gets value from you, I don't have any issues with people playing Mercy. As of now, I think she's in a pretty bad state compared to most supports. Once again, like I said, I know a good Mercy can definitely still provide your team great value, but Mercy is so dependent on your teammates and specifically your DPS that it makes it really hard to make her a viable pick. She doesn't have any damage that she can really deal out. She doesn't have anything super special about her other than her damage boost, which sometimes you might not even get value from your damage boost. So that's why I just have her this low. I just think that she's not as viable as everybody else is. I suppose we also can't forget about her res, which does come in really clutch from time to time. However, it definitely isn't as strong as an immortality field or a Suzu, which is able to save your life rather than you having to revive someone. A good res is always great, but once again, I still think Mercy's not the best support right now. So for one last time, I'm going to go ahead and throw up the best support tier list on the screen for you all to take a look at. Definitely let me know in the comments what you think, if you think this is a viable list, if you think it's a good list. Let me know if you disagree. I really don't want to hear criticism on my gameplay and hear you tell me that I suck or something or my aim's not good enough for you. So if you're going to drop a comment about that, you might as well keep it to yourself. But anybody else, I am always open to any conversations. I love hearing everybody's opinions. I love hearing what characters you all main. And I also would love to hear if you guys enjoy this video or not. If you're new, please make sure you drop a sub. I worked really hard on this video as well as my last few videos. Drop a like as well to show support. And we'll see you all next time. Thanks for stopping by.